All right, thank you. So I am in charge of the Alfalfa Yield and Persistence Project for UW-Madison, UW Extension. This study or compilation started in 2007 with two goals in mind. One was to track what actual yields farmers are seeing on their actual production fields with the practices that they're doing. And then second, to see how the stands change through the years, how they persist or how that yield changes. And it's been turned into quite a big study over that time. We are currently at 138 different fields that we've monitored and 200 or 343 site years. The map shows what's currently in 2024. The yellow counties have had studies in through the different or had at least a field monitored through the time. The ones with stars were ones that were monitored in 2024. And we have had 1,100 or so acres in 2024 with almost 5,500 tons of dry matter. Through the 18 years now, a little over 8,500 total acres and almost a little over 83,000 tons of dry matter. This is a new slide I haven't really showed before, but shows how the cutting dates have been distributed through the different years. First thing you'd see on top, and I lost it there, is what the average cut date was. So generally, it's been within a day or two of the end of the month, starting in May through August, and then compared to what 2024's cut date was. So we were about 3 to 6 days behind average in 2024. You can see the distributions below and what the yellow one showing where 2024 sat. So you can see kind of with each cut where it was a little below or a little past that average. Mainly 2024 was behind because it rained the last 2 weeks of May, and the alfalfa was ready, but farmers couldn't get in the field to get that. And in cases when they did, fields paid the price because they were still wet yet at that time. Interesting to see the distribution that in some of the really early years, like 2012, stayed early through that time, and late years like 2014 were almost mid-June before they were cut. Regardless of all those dates, though, it does most years wrap up by Labor Day-ish because corn silage has to go. Another kind of thing I can notice out of this in first and second cut, it does tend to cluster more around that date, where third and fourth cut does seem to spread out a little bit more. Dry matter, I won't go on a lot about this, just to say generally about 45% dry matter, give or take a few points, is where it's settled in over these years. Third cut was a little bit drier this year. I think we started getting into some dry weather at that time. But I do want to point out kind of how some of these graphs will be organized, that the kind of maroonish shows the max and the mean, and then the low as well. So, and then the star is where 2024 was. What we all want to know is what the yield was. And this is showing, again, that setup where historically it's been in the maroon bar, but then the star is 2024. And normally first cut is about 1.6 ton of dry matter to the acre, and we blew right off the chart. The previous high was 1.8, and we were almost 2.1 on first cut, again, because that was out there for longer than intended. Second cut was about 1.25 ton. Third cut was a little bit above average, and then fourth cut was average. And where did that all add up to? 5.13 was the total for the year. And this is showing all the years going back to the start. The three things to point out, 4.4 has been the long-term average dry matter yield. Several years stood out, like 2024 at that 5.1. Also 2010 and 2007, those were our previous best yielding years. We've had some lower years like 2020 and 2013. Look at where the blue bar ends. 5.9 is kind of the average highest yield we see. 6.57 was one of the fields in 2024, which was the second highest field we saw, a little bit higher, or just behind the 6.6 we saw in 2021. That one that hit that amount was the first cut on that was June 11th, and it was kind of the last field standing in the area. So a lot of that yield was from first cut. The other thing to point out is 2.8 has been the average of the lowest field. And you can see there's a few years where 3 cuts or 4 cuts didn't yield a lot on some of these fields. The distribution through the years has tended to cluster really nice around that 4.5 ton to the acre if you look at the blue bars. And you can see that in 2024, most of the fields were above that average. The other thing I want to point out on here is that in 18 years, about 24 of those times we didn't get 3-ton yield. And 15 of those times, so a little bit less than 1 time a year on average, we got at least 6-ton yield. How then, looking at how the alfalfa yield was distributed through, first of all, the season. And what this one's showing is most of the fields were 4-cut system. We get a little more than a third of the yield on the first cut, and that goes down through the year. All the fields in 2024 were cut 4 times, and because we were weighted a little heavier towards the first 2 cuts, and actually about 2/3 of the yield was in the first 2 cuts, we were a little bit above average in those. And then the other is how we look at how stands change through time. And generally in the first, we don't measure the first year it was planted. Our first year production is the year after seeding. So then comparing that to the second year after seeding, we see about the same, maybe a little bit better yield there. Then it starts to drop off as it goes down through that time to about 94% and then 86%. However, this year, because 2020 and 2021 where some of these fields were planted, were a little lower yields, and we had really good years, a really good year in 2024. We did see actually some of these doing better in 2024 than they did in the first year of those stands. Quality hasn't been the main focus of the study, but we get it along with our lab results, so we present that. Overall quality in 2024 wasn't the best, but some of the late season made up for that. Crude protein was about a point under under average. We did see some of the higher NDF that we've had. Little better digestibility, so that helped make up for some of that, but we did still have below normal RFQ. Milk per ton was up a little bit. But I put the first cut on here just to show you how that compared. And first cut had pretty bad protein, really high NDF, and really low relative forage quality. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge those who made this possible. First of all, the forage producers who took the time and effort to share their results. The county coordinators who helped collect samples and calculate the yields, and then finally Midwest Forage Association for funding the forage analysis. And if anyone's interested in contributing to this, we are looking for more fields for 2025. The parameters would be that they were seeded in 2024. It does help to have a scale on the farm to collect the weights. It would be a multi-year commitment for the life of the stand, and it's not a yield contest. There's no financial reward, but we do share back the yield and quality results with the producers. And if you are interested, contact your regional extension educator or myself, and my contact info is on there.